Greetings to lecturers and audiences. My name is Muhammad Fiqri, matrix number BM23110054, and today I will be delivering my presentation with the topic of central nervous system. There is more focus on the brain and also neuroradiology. So first up, the central nervous system is actually a part of nervous system, and it consists of the brain and also the spinal cord. And as for the neuroradiology, it is actually a subspecialty within radiology, which concerns is mainly on the brain. And this is one of the experts in neuroradiology. Her name is Dr. N.G. Osborne, and she is a neuroradiologist that has contributed many things such as the advanced MRI scan usage, created structure system, revolutionized neuroradiology, and also authored an influential textbook on neuroradiology. Now moving on to the next slide, which is the anatomy of the brain. So as you can see in this slide, the brain can actually be divided into four major parts, namely the cerebrum, which functions in providing the ability to read, write, speak, remembering, and also imagining. The cerebellum, which functions is to evaluate how well the movements are actually being carried out. The diencephalon, which forms the core of the brain and consists of the thalamus and hypothalamus, and lastly the brainstem, which consists of the medulla oblongata, midbrain, and pons.
In addition to that, the brain can also be divided into the right and left hemisphere, which both contribute to different functions in our body. For example, the right hemisphere of the brain receives signals from the left side of the body and controls the muscle on the left side of the body. It also functions in other things such as the musical and artistic awareness, space and pattern perception, recognition of emotional content of facial expression, the general emotional content of language, the generation of mental image to compare spatial relationship, and also the identifying among others. The left hemisphere, on the other hand, functions in receiving signals from the right side of the body and also controls the muscle on the right side of the body. And other than that, it also functions in reasoning, numerical and scientific skill, ability to use and understand sign language, as well as the spoken and written language.
Next, on to the neurotransmitter. So as we know, the neurotransmitter is actually the chemical messenger in the nervous system, and it is very crucial for various functions in our body. So, how does the neurotransmitter actually works? So as you can see in this picture, the neurotransmitters are actually synthesized within the cell body of neuron, and then it is packaged into the synaptic vesicles. And upon stimulation, these vesicles will undergo exocytosis, in which the neurotransmitters are released into the synaptic cleft. And then the neurotransmitters will diffuse across the cleft and bind to specific receptors on the postsynaptic membrane, which may include the ligand-gated ion channel or receptors. This binding will then initiate a series of events which can involve the opening of the ion channels, alterations in membrane potentials, or the activations of intracellular signaling pathways. And then these changes will then ultimately lead to the transmission of signals and also the generation of response in the postsynaptic neuron.
An example of the neurotransmitter transfer can be interpreted from the generation of the lifting hand movement. This process starts from the motor cortex of the brain, which generate a neural signals. The signals will then travel down to the motor neuron, and then the motor neuron will reach to the neuromuscular junction, which connect the motor neuron and also the muscle fiber. And then this will ultimately lead to the release of the neurotransmitter, namely the acetylcholine into the synaptic cleft, which will then bind to the receptors on the sarcolemma and cause the triggering of action potential in the muscle fiber. This action potential will then lead to the release of the calcium ion from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and then the calcium ion will bind to the troponin and cause the formation of cross bridge between the actin and myosin filament, which will then cause the muscle to contract and finally the hand to be lifted.
Now, moving on to the brain disease, there are various diseases related to the brain, such as the Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and neuroradiologists are often involved further interpreting of these conditions using MRI or CT scan. For the Parkinson's disease, it is a brain condition that primarily affects the movements, and this disease occurs due to the loss of dopamine producing neurons, which, as you can see in this brain scan, will further cause a shrinkage in the substantia nigra region. And among the early symptoms of this Parkinson's disease are tremors, muscle stiffness, and changes in postures. Now, moving on to the next disease, which is the Alzheimer. This disease is due to the shrinkage of the hippocampus and also the cerebral cortex, which will further cause the enlargement of ventricle, which, as you can see in this brain scan, there's a visible enlargement of the brain ventricle. And among the early symptoms of this disease are memory loss and confusion with time and place. So, in conclusion, the brain is actually one of the vital organs in our body, and without it, we won't be able to do our daily day-to-day job. And neuroradiology is a very, very fascinating field of work, and the development of it will certainly benefit us in terms of health. So that is all for me. Thank you for listening.